There are moments in history when a single voice pierces the silence and awakens an entire continent. This is one of those moments. From the heart of West Africa, a young leader stood before the world and did what few dared to do. He did not whisper behind closed doors. He did not beg for respect. He roared with truth. And his words didn't just shake the halls of the United Nations, they rattled the very idea of foreign domination over Africa. Have you ever felt your heart break watching Africa silently endure its pain? Children drink dirty water and starve in silence while our parents work endlessly yet sleep hungry. We've been forgotten, ignored, and underestimated for too long. But now we rise not with anger, but with unity, courage, and hope. Share this video so our voices reach every corner of the world. Let heaven witness our strength. Let the world see a rising Africa, proud, free, and unbreakable. Comment your location to show Africa is not alone. Like and subscribe to support a continent that refuses to be broken. And we are not alone. A hero stands with us. President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. Hear the powerful words he spoke that left the world in awe. While others played politics, Traoré made a stand. While many bowed to pressure, he rose with courage. And what triggered this firestorm was not a battlefield, but a message. A warning allegedly from Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, threatening African leaders to stay in line or face the consequences. But Traoré did not flinch. He did not negotiate with fear. He faced that message with thunder. He spoke not only to Netanyahu, but to every force that has treated Africa as a playground, a resource mine, a territory to divide and control. And when he spoke, something changed, not just in Burkina Faso. Across Mali, Niger, Guinea, South Africa, young people, elders, farmers, students, they heard their own pain, their own hope, echoed in his words. This is not just a speech. It is a final warning, a line in the sand, a declaration that the old world order is cracking and a new Africa is rising. Stay with me, because what you are about to witness is more than a message. It is a call to history. It is the voice of a continent that has decided to rise together and unstoppable. It began with a whisper, a message that carried across oceans and deserts, a message wrapped in threat, dressed as warning. It came from Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. Though not officially confirmed, it spread fast. He had allegedly warned African leaders to stay in line or face consequences. For generations, such words would have been met with silence, bowed heads, and quiet compliance, but not this time, not with this leader. Ibrahim Traoré did not choose diplomacy, he chose defiance. In the capital city of Ouagadougou, before the eyes of his people surrounded by cameras and silence thick with anticipation, Traoré stepped forward. He had no script, no prepared remarks, just fire. The kind that comes from pain long buried and pride long denied. He looked into the camera, not with fear, but with fury. He did not blink. He did not waver. "We are no longer colonies," he said. "We are sovereign nations." That moment split history in two. In a world where African leaders are expected to bow, Traoré rose. In a world where leaders are told to stay quiet, he thundered, and he was just getting started. With each word, the air in the room grew heavier. His voice cut through like a blade. He did not speak in metaphors. He did not hide behind polite phrases. He called it what it was: a threat, a form of control, a continuation of the same colonial hand that had crushed Africa for centuries. And then he made it personal. Burkina Faso does not answer to Tel Aviv. We do not answer to Washington. We will not be bought. We will not be bombed into submission. In that moment, the world stopped. It was no longer just a speech. It was a declaration of war against every form of neocolonialism. Against every government, every institution, every hand that has tried to reach into Africa and take what does not belong to them. But this was not just about anger, it was about dignity. For too long, Africa has been spoken to, never spoken with. Decisions made in foreign capitals have shaped the lives of millions who never got a say. Traoré's message shattered that tradition. He flipped the table and demanded a new one built in Africa by Africans for Africans. It was the stand the continent had been waiting for. A stand not of violence, but of voice, not of bullets, but of bravery. It was the moment Africa stared back at power and refused to blink. Traoré knew the risks. He knew the headlines that would follow. He knew the sanctions, the criticism, the silence from allies. But he also knew something greater. He was not alone. Behind him stood a continent ready to remember who it truly is. He did not speak as a politician. He spoke as a son of Africa, as a brother to the oppressed, as a voice for the voiceless. And with that voice, he broke through decades of manipulation and fear. This was not a rebellion, this was a rebirth. The trigger may have been a message from Netanyahu, but the stand that belonged to Traoré, and it marked the beginning of something unstoppable. It was supposed to be a routine press statement, just another politician talking to a room full of reporters. But what happened in Ouagadougou that day was far from routine. It was electric, it was raw, it was unforgettable. Traoré's voice carried not only through microphones but straight into the hearts of millions. And once it left his lips, it could not be contained. The video of his speech exploded across Africa like wildfire. It started with a few shares on Telegram, on X, on WhatsApp. Then it grew. Within hours, it was everywhere. Screens lit up in villages and cities alike. From dusty roads in Mali to university dorms in South Africa, from market stalls in Guinea to farms in Niger, everyone was watching, everyone was listening. But it was more than just watching. People were feeling it. Every word Traoré spoke ignited something that had been sleeping for too long. The silence of generations cracked open. His words were not just his, they became the voice of a continent long ignored and often betrayed. In Mali, Colonel Assimi Goïta shared the video with one sentence, "He speaks for us all." In Guinea, President Mamadi Doumbouya posted his support, declaring that Traoré was not standing alone. In Nigeria, artists remixed the speech into music. In Kenya, students debated his message in classrooms. In the Sahel, soldiers listened with their rifles beside them and nodded in quiet agreement. Hashtags spread like banners across digital front lines. Africa will not bow. We stand with Traoré. The energy was not one of chaos, it was clarity. This was not about one man, it was about a people reclaiming the right to speak, to choose, to dream. The continent has heard many speeches before. Grand promises, shiny conferences, words soaked in diplomacy but empty of truth. This was different. This was not a performance. It was a piercing cry of awakening. It felt real because it was real. It hurt because it told the truth. When Traoré said, "If you come for one of us, you come for all of us," it echoed far beyond the room. It became a vow, a shield, a mirror held up to a fractured continent, reminding itself that unity is power, and dignity is not negotiable. There was no fancy backdrop, no international applause, no staged smiles, just a man, a microphone, and a message. And somehow that simplicity made it even more powerful. He did not ask to be a symbol, but he became one, not of perfection, but of purpose. And what followed was not silence, it was noise, beautiful, defiant, roaring noise. Across Africa, youth movements began organizing. Artists began painting murals of Traoré as a warrior of the people. Writers called him a lion of the Sahel. Elders said, "Finally one of ours speaks without fear." This speech became a spark, and in a continent full of dry, kindling poverty, broken promises, foreign meddling, it lit a fire. The world was forced to look. And though some chose to look away, Africa had already seen enough. Traoré's words had opened a door that could not be closed. This was no longer just a speech, it was history in motion. For decades, Africa has carried wounds that never healed. The scars of slavery, the betrayal of false independence, the humiliation of being treated as a burden, not a partner. We were divided by lines drawn by strangers, ruled by systems we did not build, and told to wait for help, for permission, for progress. But Ibrahim Traoré's words did something extraordinary. They awakened something ancient, something fierce, something that had been quietly growing beneath the surface. Africa remembered who it was. This awakening is not loud at first. It does not begin with guns or revolts. It begins with questions. Why must we ask others to define our value? Why must we depend on aid that chains us? Why must we tolerate threats in exchange for respect? These questions are no longer whispered in frustration. They are shouted in pride. The answer, Traoré said, is unity. And it is no longer a dream. It is being built, stone by stone, promise by promise, in the Sahel Alliance. An unbreakable bond between Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. But its spirit travels further, across borders, across oceans. This is not just an alliance of states, it is a family of purpose. In the past, Africa's enemies used division as a weapon. Now we are using unity as a shield, and not just for defense, for vision, for creation. This is an Africa that does not beg for inclusion. It builds its own table and invites the world on its terms. Traoré's message was clear. Sovereignty is not a slogan, it is action. It is saying no to foreign bases that spy and manipulate. It is tearing up unfair contracts that strip away gold, oil, and dignity. It is standing in front of the world and declaring, "We will decide what happens on African soil." That is the Africa that is rising now. And it is not rising alone. It is rising with farmers in Niger who say, "We plant our crops for ourselves, not for export to distant supermarkets." It is rising with students in Guinea who ask, "Why should we study foreign history more than our own?" It is rising with mothers in South Africa who tell their daughters, "You do not need to look west to find beauty. You carry it in your skin, your mind, your strength." Africa's awakening is not about revenge. It is about remembrance. It is about looking to the past, not with chains, but with wisdom. Our ancestors resisted with spears. Today we resist with truth, with unity, with self-determination, and most powerfully with love for our people. In this awakening, fear has no place. In this awakening, shame is buried. In this awakening, every African, rich or poor, educated or not, feels the pulse of something larger than themselves. A movement, a rebirth, a roar from the soil itself. The old world looks at this with confusion. They ask why now, but they forget we have waited long enough. Africa is no longer a collection of exploited states. It is becoming a single heartbeat, a unified force, a continent that no longer pleads, it decides. And when one voice like Traoré speaks, it does not stand alone. It speaks for a billion hearts ready to rise. What does sovereignty truly mean? Is it a flag waving in the sky? A national anthem sung in schoolyards? A constitution written in law books? These are symbols, but real sovereignty lives in the choices we make and the power we refuse to surrender. Ibrahim Traoré redefined it not as theory, but as action. And in doing so, he gave Africa a new face of sovereignty, one that is bold, unapologetic, and fiercely independent. Under Traoré's leadership, Burkina Faso has taken steps that few dared to imagine. Foreign military bases were told to leave, not through secret negotiations, but with clear public decisions. "We will not be policed on our own land," he declared. And with that, French troops, once entrenched for decades, began to pack their bags. This was not about isolation, it was about self-respect. Burkina Faso also took control of its natural resources. Gold mines once operated by foreign companies under unfair contracts were reevaluated. The profits once drained into foreign banks began to flow back to the people. Schools were built, roads repaired, hospitals reopened. For the first time in generations, the wealth of the land served those who live on it. But sovereignty went deeper still. It entered the classroom. Traoré pushed for a new curriculum, one that teaches African history with pride, not shame. One that tells children that their ancestors were not savages, but scholars, warriors, and builders of empires. One that reminds them their land is not cursed, but blessed. Sovereignty is not just about rejecting outside control. It is about building something stronger in its place. Burkina Faso began investing in homegrown technology and local industries in youth-led agriculture and energy solutions. Traoré did not wait for permission from the West. He did not ask the IMF for approval. He trusted in his people. And that trust is now becoming a model. Across the Sahel, leaders are taking notes. In Mali, in Niger, in Guinea, they are seeing what it means to stand without fear, to break the old contracts, to rewrite the rules. Of course, there is resistance. The world is not used to seeing Africa rise without begging. Western media often ignores the progress or paints it as radicalism, but the silence of those outside only amplifies the pride within. Because sovereignty, real sovereignty, is not about pleasing others. It is about protecting your people and choosing your own destiny. And perhaps the most radical thing Traoré has done is this: he made ordinary people believe again. He made the mother in the village believe that her child's life can be better. He made the young student believe that staying in Africa is not a failure but a mission. He made the farmer believe that his hands are building a nation, not just planting a field. This is the new face of sovereignty. It is not polished, it is not quiet, it is not polite, it is real, it is raw, it is rising. And it is not just in Burkina Faso, it is in the hearts of millions. In every chant, every protest, every vote, every classroom where children now learn the names of African heroes instead of foreign kings. It is a new dawn. Sovereignty is not given, it is taken, it is earned. It is lived. And today, thanks to the courage of one leader and the spirit of a continent, Africa is learning to wear it with pride. Ibrahim Traoré's words were not just spoken, they were carved into the soul of a continent. His warning to Netanyahu was not only a defense of Burkina Faso, it was a defense of every African who dares to dream of freedom, of dignity, of sovereignty. And now that message is no longer his alone. It belongs to us all. Across the Sahel, across the savannah, across every corner of the continent, Africa is stirring. The silence is broken. The fear is fading. And what rises in its place is something powerful, something unstoppable. A continent that is no longer asking for a seat at the table. It is building its own. Yes, the road ahead will be hard. There will be resistance. There will be consequences. But the choice has been made. We will not go back. We will not bow. This is more than a political shift. It is a cultural awakening, a spiritual revolution, the beginning of a new era. And it begins with each of us. To every African watching this is your moment. Stand tall. Speak loud. Share this message. Let it echo in your streets, your classrooms, your homes. Because this is not just Traoré's fight, it is our fight, our history, our future. Africa is not weak. Africa is not divided. Africa is not finished. We are the descendants of warriors of kings and queens. We are the builders of nations. We are the future, and we will rise. I am Amina Diallo, a young teacher from Tambacounda, Senegal. As I listened to the words of President Ibrahim Traoré, my chest filled with both pain and pride. For too long, we in Africa have lived with wounds that never healed. Our lands were taken, our voices silenced, and our dreams dismissed. But today, something is shifting. Today, I feel Africa rising. When Traoré stood tall and said, "We will not bow," he spoke for me, for my students, for every mother who has cried, watching her child leave home searching for dignity abroad. We are tired of being divided by foreign hands. We are tired of being told who we are. We know who we are. And now, we are learning to stand together. I dream of a new Africa, one where no child studies under a tree, no farmer dies with empty hands, and no leader bows to fear. I dream of an Africa reborn where we no longer ask permission to build, to heal, to rise. Africa rising is not just a phrase, it is a heartbeat. And I feel it. In my classroom, in the voices of the youth, in the spirit of our ancestors whispering, "Now is the time."